Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Emily, and thank you everybody for joining in. My name is Meredith Brown, and I am Ottawa Riverkeeper. I'm Ottawa Riverkeeper is part of an alliance of Waterkeepers from around the world, and I just wanted to give some context before I introduce everybody else on the sewage team about this issue because Waterkeepers are there to protect people's rights to swim, drink, fish. So we really want people to be able to connect with their local water bodies. And unfortunately, our cities were built such that we have these sewer systems that help us so much, but sometimes they're releasing untreated sewage into our waterways, which has a huge problem if you want to dive in and swim in that water body. I've started with this slide of the Great Lakes watershed because I want to remind everybody that the AquaHacking is focused on Lake Ontario this year, but Lake Ontario and beyond, and all of us are working within that beautiful big area that you see, the world's largest freshwater ecosystem. And so when it came time when the AquaHacking peeps asked me if I would put forward a challenge, for me it seemed like this was a no-brainer, a really important one that there's a lot we can do to improve our systems and how they release sewage, and a really first step towards notifying people about this problem and keeping people safe is real-time reporting. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that topic. And what I wanted to do is let you know who is on this call with us, who I'm calling them our sewage mentors. Isn't that amazing? We're the sewage mentor team. But really, there's a lot of people who know a lot more about this than myself, including, we are so lucky and fortunate to have with us two of the engineers from the city of Ottawa who have been doing an amazing job to reduce the amount of sewage that's going into the river from the city of Ottawa, and they're going to be able to explain to you from the inside how it works. I'm also working with Scott McKay from the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. He works with a lot of the different mayors around the Great Lakes, and on this particular issue, he's going to shed some light from that point of view. Cheryl Nen, who is the Milwaukee Riverkeeper, has been working on the sewage issue for over a decade, and she is going to talk from the point of view of an organization in the States and what's going on in the United States. Waterkeepers have been doing a lot of work to advocate for real-time sewage reporting. Another one of our mentors is Kristen Tully from Lake Ontario Waterkeeper. Unfortunately, Kristen is not on the phone call today. I'll talk a little bit about the work that she's doing, but she will be available for questions. And then we have joining us today the Buffalo Niagara Riverkeeper as well, Joel from Buffalo. I have folks' email addresses there because these are people that you can reach out to with questions. I've not included contact info for the City of Ottawa because I'm going to be the gatekeeper for them, and if you have questions for them, you can contact me. But all these people are here. You'll be hearing from them, and they're there to help you as you try to sort through this issue and how you can help. So just on a very high level, for those of you who maybe don't know what a combined sewer overflow is, our sewer systems were built such that, you know, when everything works well, the sewage that comes from your home goes through the system and to the sewage treatment plant to be treated. Unfortunately, when it rains, we're adding a lot more volume to that system, and instead of having sewage backing up into people's houses, which nobody wants, sewage gets overflowed into a nearby lake or river. Obviously not an ideal situation, and this is what we're here to address today. I also wanted to mention that in the Ottawa River, and I think this is the case in most places, maybe other people when they're talking can chime in, but you cannot see the pipes that are carrying the combined sewer overflows. These pipes are in the river, so they're submerged, they're underwater. If you actually see a pipe, it's a stormwater pipe. the combined sewer pipes are out of sight, which is just another reason why it's important that people know they're there and what's coming out of them and when it's coming out of them. So now, if one of the questions is, well, why is this relevant to Lake Ontario, to all the hackers out there? Why is this a relevant issue? And I just thought I'd illustrate with Toronto Harbor, because this is an issue that Lake Ontario Waterkeepers has been working a lot on, and since the AquaHacking is focused on Lake Ontario, I thought I'd bring that up. So here's a map of Toronto Harbor. All the little red icons you can see are combined sewer overflow locations. So that's where untreated sewage is coming out during wet weather events, and you can see the photo of what it looks like. So put yourself into the mindset of a recreational water user who's out there in Toronto Harbor, wondering what that brown slick is coming towards them as they're swimming or kayaking, and how you would want to know when this is happening. So that's a quick and dirty picture of what's going on in Toronto. And why is this a problem? Why do people, should people be concerned, or why should we think about real-time reporting? Well, I just wanted to give a little bit on the scale of this issue. So if you look in the Great Lakes Basin, there's 184 communities that have combined sewer systems that are pushing untreated sewage out into the Great Lakes Basin. So cumulatively, that's a lot of sewage going into our drinking water sources and our playground. Sewage contains pathogens, bacteria, viruses. So if you're unfortunate enough to be out there swimming or kayaking in that, it has public health implications for sure. And according to the Environmental Protection Agency, they're estimating that approximately 3.5 million people in the US per year get sick after coming into contact with water containing harmful bacteria. So again, we're looking at this as a way to let people know how often untreated sewage is going into the river, and more importantly, where it's coming from and when it's coming, as a way to help them make informed decisions about whether or not they'll go swimming that day, or maybe where they'll go swimming. And I think the case is pretty strong. I thought I'd just spend a little bit of time talking about the rules around reporting, because as you develop your solutions, as the teams get together and start to think about what they'll do, you'll be thinking about data. Well, what data exists? And typically, data exists when there's regulations that are saying you have to report to us and give us your data. So I thought I'd just give a quick overview. In Canada, there's federal regulations. They're called the Wastewater Systems Effluent Regulations. The regulator is Environment and Climate Change Canada. And so all the municipalities that are collecting on average a volume of 100 cubic meters per day of influent, they are required to report federally. However, they just have to report annually. So once a year, they have to give their report to Environment Canada, and for each CSO point, I've listed out the things that they have to report on: the day that the effluent was deposited, the duration, it's typically an estimation, how long did that deposit last for, what was the estimated volume of that deposit, and the number of days in each month in which wastewater was deposited. So these are the things that there's a requirement to report on. Now, obviously, so that data is being collected by each municipality reporting. There's a couple things that you should know. Annual reporting doesn't help people who are about to dive in the river, that's for sure, which is why we think the real time would be great. But also so that the reporting rate is not perfect. So for example, in the province of Quebec, only 41.5% of the municipalities are reporting federally. So there's still some data gaps there. And that data is not publicly available. It is, but you have to go through the Freedom of Information Act to get the data. So it's not like there's a place where you go online and you see all that annual data. So that's on the federal piece. Provincially in Ontario, the regulator is the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. There is a regulation that requires municipal agencies who own and operate sewage infrastructure to report when they have a sewage spill. They have to report to the ministry through the Spills Action Center. That is more real-time reporting. So there's requirements there to get that out more quickly. And so I think the piece that I want to, and then when Cheryl talks from Milwaukee Riverkeeper, she can talk a little bit more about what's going on in the United States and what requirements are. But I think the point that I want to get across here is that as you think about solving this problem, every single municipality, depending on what jurisdictions they're in, they'll have slightly different rules. They'll have different data that has to be collected and reported on. So every city is going to be a little bit different, I think, is the major point there. So what's going on right now? I want to point out that in some places there's legislation that municipalities have to report in real time. So Waterkeepers in the USA, and particularly in New York State, have got this Sewage Right to Know Act in place. I think Cheryl could probably talk a little bit more about that and what's going on. In the city of Toronto, this is pretty interesting. Lake Ontario Waterkeeper submitted to the Ontario Environmental Commissioner and asking them to investigate the sewage overflows into from the city of Toronto. And it got to the point where essentially the minister, everybody recognized that, yeah, this is a public health issue, and the minister, the provincial minister, ordered the city of Toronto to start reporting to the public on their spills. They still, as I understand it, don't have a system in place. The city of Kingston has been really in Ontario model for public reporting. I want to point out that we have with us today on the phone call Mike, who's with Utilities Kingston, if there's questions. But I'd really highly recommend you look to what the city of Kingston is doing. They've got a really nice online public reporting system for their sewage overflows. The city of Sudbury also enacted a bylaw whereas they have to report in real time. So they have email alerts, essentially. You get an email that says, unfortunately, we're inundated at this site. We've had to open the gates. There's sewage spilling. And then you get another email an hour or two later saying the event has stopped. And it's pretty simple. So those are some good ideas of some of the things that are happening. You'll hear some more from some of the other folks on the call today. And I just want to put it out there that Waterkeepers, what we're recommending is we want to rule that permitted entities should have some form of display for real-time reporting on CSO, whether that's a website, social media, smartphone app. There's so many different ways, shapes, and forms that could happen. And one of which I'm going to give an example of what the city of Ottawa is doing. And I want to point out that the city of Ottawa has been really, in my opinion, leaders in Canada when it comes to addressing their sewage spills from their combined sewer overflows. They've done a tremendous job and invested a lot of money to reduce their sewage spills by volumes of over 80% so far. And they're in the middle of a big project right now that's going to reduce them significantly more. I wanted this photo that you see on right now is a slide of a little channel in the city of Ottawa. It's called the Pump House Channel, where whitewater kayakers have a course set up where they train. And it's unfortunately right at a place where there's a combined sewer overflow. So the city of Ottawa has put in real-time reporting at that site. I don't know if you can see it on the photo, but there's a black post with a sign, and there's a little red light on top of that black post so that when the gates are open and there's a sewage spill happening, that red light goes on. That warns everybody who's in that channel of what's happening, and then they can make an informed decision about whether or not they're going to risk staying in the water or whether they're going to get out of the water. So that's a really neat example of real-time reporting that's happening in the city of Ottawa. The city of Ottawa has also been really transparent with their data on their CSO events that they put on their website. So I've listed the website URL there where you can go on and learn a lot about the terms and what they're doing, and you can see their data. The data is not going up in real time, but often it's coming up the next day. So I think with that, I'd like to introduce Louis and Andrew, engineers from the City of Ottawa. And Louis and Andrew, do you want to take it from here and talk about what's going on with City of Ottawa?
I'll start this. Just a second. I'm not on the
Andrew, it seems like you are connected with two devices, maybe your phone and web. Maybe just mute one. We're getting some feedback.
We have just a laptop at the moment.
Perfect. Now you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, great.
Okay. Well, I'm
Oh, sorry, Andrew. We lost you again. Maybe you just need to speak closer to your mic.
Yeah, it seems our microphone seems to be quite directional at the moment. I'll point it directly to Louis Julien now, and we'll see how that works for us.
Perfect. That's good.
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay, good. I'm Louis Julien with the city. I'm more on the planning side of things. I've been planning CSO control measures for the city for the past 14 years. Andrew here with me and Scott Laberge, they're on the operational side. They run these facilities and measures that are built. So they have a more hands-on frontline knowledge of what's going on. So on that, maybe I'll leave it to Andrew to talk about the first agenda item.
Our current collection and reporting of our data. I'm Andrew Hall. I'm a process technologist with wastewater collection system for the City of Ottawa. We have a process technologist who mans the system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from a control room located at the Robert O. Picard Environmental Center, which is the wastewater treatment plant for the City of Ottawa. So we look after not just the real-time control sites, but also all of our pumping facilities throughout the collection system. So we monitor whatever overflows we can throughout the city. So my role, when we start to get indication from our level instrumentation that we are beginning to have a CSO event, is to first verify the operation of all of our equipment to ensure that what I'm reporting is an actual overflow. Because as you all know, what we are releasing to the environment is not a consistent, nice, clear water product. It can be very disruptive to level and flow measurement instrumentation. Once we've established that the event, we verified that an event is occurring and that our real-time control equipment is working optimally to minimize the flow to the river. We have an immediate call to the Ministry of Environment, Spills Action Center, to let them know that an event is actually occurring along our particular stretch of the Ottawa River. And then we send out an email notification also at that point, notifying our public health, city engineering department, all of relevant supervisors for wastewater collection and treatment, as well as our fire and emergency services. Everyone in the City of Ottawa, when an event has started and been verified, is aware of it. Later on, we start to report the actual volume of an event, typically within 24 hours after an event has concluded. We call back to the Spills Action Center, close the event by finalizing a volume. And by that point, we've had a chance to vet the data to make sure that we're reporting an accurate number. Instrumentation, again, we're trying to measure an overflow, which varies wildly during heavy rain and weather events. We want to make sure we're reporting sufficient volume, first of all, to make sure we are doing our due diligence, but also to make sure that it's a fair volume. So when we're making changes to our infrastructure, making certain that we are accommodating what's actually flowing in our pipes. Priority for us, though, I would say, is immediately notifying that an event is occurring. A saying we used to use when I was a ski patroller is you expect the worst and prove the best. Most important for us is to let the public know that an event is actually occurring. Once they know that, and if there are ways to speed that up, ideally that would be fantastic. Once they know it's occurring, it's not so important for them at that moment to know how much and how fast it's coming out. It's just that it's present.
Hi there, it's Scott LaBerge, manager wastewater collection here with the city. Andrew's done a fantastic job here describing what it is, how we update in real time currently, or what our current processes are. I'd like to thank as well Meredith for pointing out the work that we've done over time to limit the amount of CSO to the Ottawa River. And we have done some extensive work over time to limit, such as improving the system by doing sewer replacement projects, our real-time control project to get better recording and automation, and ensure that we're using the full system capacity during rain events. And then, as Meredith mentioned, we're currently in construction of a $200+ million project to complete the combined sewage storage tunnel that would capture some of this combined sewage to bring it to our treatment plant for full treatment. So I think that a lot of the work that we've done over the past 10 years, we've been able to reduce our combined sewage overflow volume by 2/3 and reduce the frequency of events by half. Again, there's more to come with our CSST project. Meredith did mention that at our highest risk site to the public at I'll call it the tail race, where the kayak course is. We've installed a beacon there to locally notify anybody in the water that there is an event that's occurring. We, I guess, to Meredith's point as well, we do share data online on our ottawa.ca site in regards to CSO volumes. So Andrew had mentioned that our process is when an event starts, we're letting the Ministry of Environment and our downstream water users, so those are downstream drinking water users, and the public, our public health officials know that we have an overflow event. We're sending out then an email to just let a distribution list know that the event has started. We're monitoring those events in real time as they occur. And then 12 hours following the end of an event is when we're sending out that another notification that has an estimated volume, an estimated overflow volume. Typically, that estimated overflow volume you'll see on our ottawa.ca site under our wastewater page. Those overflow volumes are posted, and they're typically available within 24 hours following the event.
Okay, that's really, really great, really helpful information from the city. I think that gives everybody a really, opens up your eyes to what happens from, the point of view of the people that are looking after our sewers and what their priorities are. I'd like now to introduce Cheryl Nen. Are you there, Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Cheryl is the Milwaukee Riverkeeper, and Cheryl's going to talk a little bit about what's going on her side of the border. Thanks,
Great.
Cheryl.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, let me know or pipe in if you stop hearing me. Thanks for having me. I'll just give I'm Cheryl again. I'm with Milwaukee Riverkeeper. I've been here for about 15 years. I'll just do a really quick overview of kind of what's happening here in Milwaukee, I guess more from an NGO perspective. We also have had, I think we have very similar issues, and we've had a big history here of sewage overflows over the years. The way our system is we have a fairly large system in Milwaukee, which is the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, and they treat sewage for the city of Milwaukee and 28 other municipalities that send sewage to them. So we have kind of a combined system. I mean, in terms of, we have a combined sewer overflow system in downtown Milwaukee and part of a village called Shorewood, where all of the stormwater and sewage goes to the same, pipe system and then overflows at, potentially up to 121 different locations in our metro region. And then we also have these 28 tributary municipalities that send their sewage to the sewage treatment plant. And they also, have their stormwater goes essentially directly into local waterways. And sometimes, depending on capacity with the combined system, if that runs out of capacity, there are also sanitary sewer overflows that occur kind of upstream in the system in these 28 other municipalities. And we have up to 133 different locations where essentially pure sewage can be discharged. Most of our issues are related to wet weather, which I think is similar everywhere probably. We used to have close to 50 sewage overflows a year as far as the combined sewers. And now I think the MMSD is down to about 2 to 3 per year. Last year they had 1 because it was a little bit drier. But so we've been able to get those overflows down pretty significantly. I think Ottawa mentioned they're building a deep tunnel system, and we have built one here that went online in kind of late 93, early 94, which did dramatically reduce overflows. We were still seeing, however, that there was a lot of kind of preemptive CSO discharge happening to kind of make room, if you will, for the pure sewage that was coming in from the municipalities. There wasn't a lot of good metering going on as far as knowing when a lot of that sewage from the upstream municipalities was going to get to the treatment plant. So there was still a lot of overflows happening. Our organization actually sued the sewage district, which was a very long process. Our state then kind of overfiled and also came in and sued to kind of shield them from our litigation. But the long story short of that was it was 8 years of litigation that went to the Supreme Court, but then they didn't take the case and then went back down. But MMSD ended up doing about 3 tunnel extensions to our original tunnel. And also, did a lot of upgrades on metering and modeling and kind of better understanding, how the flows were coming into the system, and have done a much better job of kind of using the tunnel and maximizing the storage that's available to us, during these rain events. So there's been really huge improvements. We're really happy that we are a small part of that. Our area spent well over $1 billion, and the numbers might be, well above that at this point. On improving our sewage system since I've been here over the last 15 years or so. So, we're really proud of that. The sewage district does a pretty, I think, good job of notifying when we have overflows. They have a website that has a little, thunderbolt when it's raining, and you can click on it, and it basically tells you, if there's been an overflow, where the location is. They do estimates of volume if they know at the time. Sometimes they don't. And then they also have information on rain and where the rain's occurring in this larger system. Because in our system, like anywhere else, the rain, doesn't always hit the whole system in the same places each time. So it gives you a sense of where there's overflows happening we have 3 different rivers that have overflow locations. And many different communities. So it gives you a sense of what's happening in each rain event. And so that's been really helpful. I think similar to Canada, they, are required to notify as quickly as possible, kind of a small list of people that includes our Department of Natural Resources, our, water department, We discharge most of our sewage to, our 3 rivers in Lake Michigan, which is also where we get our drinking water. So they, are required to let the water treatment folks know instantly, as soon as they can. So I think they do a pretty good job of that. They're required to do a written report to our state DNR in 24 hours and then a 5-day report. I think similar to what Meredith mentioned, we generally have to do open records requests to get that information. Most of that information is provided to the media, though, and so often we get it through them, to be honest. But they do notice pretty quickly on the website. The problem is that you have to actually go to the website to see if there's an overflow, and I don't know how many people do that in the region. I certainly do, and others, but I think since our overflows have decreased and our water quality has improved for a lot of reasons. We removed a lot of dams, and that certainly helped as well. But we have a lot of people recreating in the rivers increasingly, and we have 2 different kayak companies that have opened in the last 5 years, and we have a lot of people on the water. And so we've been really pushing the district to do, to look at other tools to get the word out about overflows. We often have the businesses calling us wondering, whether they should close for the day or not. After there's been an overflow event. And, our beaches often too, just after rainfalls, are preventatively closed for a few days. So if there's a big rain event, we often, encourage them to close business just because we don't know what's going on upstream. Sometimes it's very hard to get information from the smaller municipalities that are outside of the Metro Milwaukee region. It's harder to find out about those overflows because we have about another 12 sewage treatment plants upstream of here that are in kind of more small rural areas. So, so I think that the large district here has been doing some cool stuff. They have an app that you can opt into that basically tells you when there's kind of threat of overflows or when there's rain. And, they have a big public campaign to try to get people to, stop doing the laundry and dishes and that kind of thing when it's raining so that we can minimize the, the potential of having overflows. And, my hope would be that you could do something very similar with that same app or a different one, that people could opt into that are kayakers and paddlers and swimmers in some case, that would really want to get that real-time notification to their cell phone or, find an easier way to figure out, if they don't have a computer on them right away that they can, and also a lot of people don't maybe remember or, the weather could be good where they're paddling, but there could be overflows upstream that they're not aware of. So just, it'd be really nice to have some way of having better and more timely notification of overflows in the area. But I think that's mostly what I was going to say. I think I'll stop there and just be able to answer questions later. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's fantastic, Cheryl. And I think that gives everybody some really great ideas too for places where we could have improvement. So thanks for sharing. I have one more person on our team, Scott McKay, that we'll hear from, and then we'll open it up to questions from everybody. So Scott, do you have some words to add?
Yes, well, I'll be quick just to mention, we've heard from Ottawa and Cheryl just mentioned what's been done around Milwaukee. So I think, it is CSO and sewage spills are a problem, but it is a problem that the cities are tackling with. So we're excited with this challenge in the sense that it will help link, all the hard work that's being done by cities with the end users, with the community, and hopefully we can all together make sure that we get much more efficient real-time reporting, and that all of this will continue improving the overall water quality in the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence region. So we'll be happy to help any member team, any teams participating in the AquaHacking challenge to get access to cities, to great mentors and the data also that's available out there. So we hope we can help, and there's a lot to be done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Scott. So now's the time where if there's people who have questions, Emily, I'm going to turn it to you to let us know what questions are out there, if any.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you are joining us on the web, on your computer, feel free to pop any questions into the chat box. Alternatively, I think we have a few people who are joining us by phone. So you may have missed the presentation, but if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself on your phone and we can take a few questions that way as well. So I don't see any questions yet in the chat box, but we will wait just a few moments. Again, if you joined us a bit later for the presentation, we have been recording it. We will be posting it online and we will share the link with you. So any of your questions that you might think of later, we can definitely address those. Okay, there is one question here from Evan from Ryerson. He says, perhaps the folks from Ottawa can answer this. Can you describe the type of monitoring system that you currently use? Are you using flow meters, water level sensors, etc.? How useful would it be for you to gain information about the actual quality or composition of the overflow? Andrew, are you there? Maybe able to tackle this one?
Hi, it's Scott. So I guess just to get some clarity around the question, it's around what systems do we have in place to monitor overflows? So we're using a mix of instrumentation with some calculated values. So it's flow meters and level sensors. And yeah, Louis can will actually add to that.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Every CSO site is different. You got to remember that most of these were built 70, 80 years ago when flow monitoring did not exist. So they were not built in a way that's conducive to accurate or easy monitoring. So depending on the site, we will either measure level and then derive flow from level only. At some sites, we measure level and velocity and calculate flow on that basis. And we don't measure overflows at all sites at the city, and I think most municipalities have a similar approach, and many municipalities don't monitor at all, in fact. But the sites that we do monitor here in Ottawa with either level and velocity or just level, they generate 98% or more of our volume, and they're also the most active sites. So as far as quality goes, we do some sampling from time to time, but sampling in combined sewers and structures is extremely difficult and expensive. In fact, we did a study and we found that it cost us about $10,000 per successful sample picked up, because we're storm chasing. You arrive at the site and the storm is over, and so on and so forth. And with respect to quality, we found that it's highly variable, and that's to be expected. And would it be useful to have that in real time? Well, no, not really, because a lot of these tests that we have to take time to do, for example, to know the pathogen count, it's a 24-hour test once the sample gets to the lab. So that's hardly real-time reporting. And again, it's just the cost of sampling for water quality that's so expensive. We think that our limited financial resources are better spent on other initiatives.
This is Andrew. I had the, we'll call it privilege, to be the person who would climb down into the manhole and collect the samples during a portion of our sampling program. In certain way, in a lot of ways, the samples were becoming really quite redundant. What we were sending to the river, we already knew was combined raw sewage, so the presence of E. coli and bacteria was not in question. But to the larger point, it may be of some minor use for us to know what the actual composition is, but we can't control the contribution to the system. So it's coming to us regardless, is basically what it comes down to. I hope that answers your question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew, and everyone there with you. It looks like Evan is satisfied with your answers, so that is perfect for all of that detail. We do have one other question here from Darko. He says, one of the challenges with CSOs is that they can occur in the collection system. So he means connections between sanitary or combined and storm sewers, as well as direct outfalls to receiving water. Are these locations, which can be numerous, also included in the challenge? So maybe Meredith, you might want to address this one.
Sure. I'm just going to assume that the question is more about, like, would it be important to know the location that the spill is coming from? And absolutely. I mean, for a lot of these systems, like the Ottawa River is a big river and a long river, and so people are accessing it at different places for different types of reasons. So knowing the location that a spill is happening, I think, is really important and helpful.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Meredith. Darko, if you need further clarification there, feel free to just pop it in the chat. If there are any questions by anyone on phone, again, feel free to unmute yourself and we can take some time and chat about those. Again, we will be posting this recording on the website. I will send an email around with the link so that you can watch it again. And if there are any questions after the fact, after this live recording, if you're listening to the posted recording, then by all means, we will be able to connect you with Meredith or others who will be able to answer any of your questions. So it does look like that is all of the questions at the moment. We'll just wait another few moments, but in the meantime, Meredith and your entire team, Cheryl and Andrew and Scott and everyone else who has piped in here, we are so thankful for this presentation. You have provided an incredible amount of detail and really set us up well for understanding this challenge. So thank you for all the work that you've put into putting this together and for sharing the presentation and taking the time to answer all of our questions. So at this point, we will wrap up the webinar. And again, thank you to everyone who has joined us. And if you are interested in taking on this challenge, we look forward to connecting with you further. Thanks, everyone.